What if I told you that the strongest prison in the world isn't built with steel bars and concrete walls, but with words? That your very own language could be twisted into a cage? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, but it is a very real thing, and today we're going to break down exactly how it's done.
Yeah, I know. It sounds a little bit out there. But what we're digging into here is a real framework that shows how this happens, and it really forces us to face this pretty unsettling question. Can words actually build a prison around your mind?
Okay, so how does a process like this even get started? Well, it's not with some big dramatic event. Not at all. It's much quieter. It starts with the everyday words we all use. That's what this first part is all about. Words that build walls, and the invisible border created by coercive language.
So the very first move is, honestly, it's a clever hijacking of the language you and I use every day. And the goal is simple: to slice the world neatly in two. There's the us, the enlightened, safe ones, and then there's them, the dangerous, misguided outsiders. It's such a basic move, but it is a shockingly effective way to build a mental fortress. And the main tool they use to do this? It's something called loaded language. And when you really look at what that means, you get it. These aren't just words. They're emotional landmines. They're specifically designed to bypass all your logic, all your critical thinking, and go straight for an emotional gut punch.
All right, so how does this actually work in the real world? Let's break it down. First, it's a psychological shortcut, right? Why think for yourself when you've been handed a ready-made emotional reaction? Second, it turns the entire outside world into something to be afraid of, a threat. And finally, and this part is absolutely key, it builds this invisible fence inside a person's head way before they'd ever even think about leaving.
Okay, so once those invisible walls are up, the next step is to control everything that happens inside them. And that brings us to part two, the architecture of control. We're looking at the blueprint for a system designed to literally stop thought.
Now, this is a huge concept. It's called a thought-terminating cliché. And I just love this analogy. It's a mental emergency brake. Think about it. The second a dangerous or, a critical thought starts to form in your mind, bam! You're trained to yank that brake and bring the whole thought process to a screeching halt.
And here is a perfect and honestly a pretty chilling example. Let's say you start to question something you've been told. Immediately this little phrase gets dropped, either by someone else or even by you to yourself. That's just the enemy talking. And just like that, doubt is gone. Conversation over. It's just brutally effective. But wait, it gets even more subtle than that. Take a look at this for the word love. On one side, you've got the definition we all understand, affection, empathy, care. But on the other side, the group's definition is total obedience. By twisting a word that fundamental, they create a totally private reality. You're using the same word as everyone else, but you're not even speaking the same language anymore. So, what's the end result of all this? It leads to something called semantic saturation. Basically, by hearing all this jargon, all these clichés and twisted words over and over and over again, your brain just gets numb to it. It stops seeing nuance. It stops even looking for facts. The jargon isn't just words anymore. The jargon is reality. So, what happens when somebody actually manages to leave? The physical control might be over, but that language, it sticks around. And that's our next section, the lingering echoes, or what you could call the linguistic hangover that happens after you leave. And the challenges people face, they're huge. You find yourself still thinking in those old, rigid patterns. You feel totally isolated because the special words that meant everything inside the group mean nothing to people on the outside. And maybe the worst part? You struggle to even explain what happened to you because the only vocabulary you have for it is the one your abusers gave you. I know that all sounds incredibly bleak, but there is hope. There's a way out. You can actually take this mental fence apart, piece by piece. Which brings us to our next part, deconstructing the mental fence. This is the framework for taking back your own mind. And the way forward is actually a really clear three-step plan. It's a path to what we can call linguistic freedom. The steps are: 1. Identify red flags. 2. Reset your baseline. And 3. Practice linguistic fasting. Okay, so step 1 is all about awareness. You've got to start paying attention to the words that trigger a really strong emotional reaction in you, for no good reason. That sudden jolt of fear? Or that wave of guilt you didn't earn? That's a red flag. That's how you know a word is loaded.
Next up, step 2. This is about reconnecting with shared reality. You take those red flag words and you do something almost ridiculously simple. You look them up in a dictionary. You compare the group's warped definition of a word like love with what the rest of the world knows it means. It's a small thing, but it helps reset your own internal compass.
And finally, step 3. I want you to think of this one like a mental detox. It's called linguistic fasting, and it just means you consciously decide to stop using the group's jargon. You just stop. You're basically starving out those old programmed thought patterns, and that's what creates the space for your own authentic thoughts to finally come through.
And all of this leads to the real goal here. Because this isn't just about getting away from something bad. It's about building something new, something that's all yours. So let's talk about the final stage. Reclaiming your own story and going from being a subject to becoming the author.
You know, when you boil it all down, it's really about 2 different paths for language. On one path, you've got that coercive language. It's designed to isolate, to control, and to confuse. But on the other path is authentic language, the kind you find for yourself. And that language connects, it liberates, and it clarifies. It really is the difference between a prison and a bridge.
And this is such a critical point. Getting better isn't just about forgetting the old stuff, it's about learning new stuff. When you find new, precise words for your experience, words like coercion, loaded language, thought-stopping, it gives you power. It lets you finally understand what happened, and more importantly, explain it to other people.
And that is the final transformation. See, when you're trapped inside that linguistic prison, you're just a character in a story that someone else is writing for you. By taking back your language, you get to pick up the pen yourself. You stop being the subject of the story, and you finally become its author.
So I guess the biggest takeaway from all of this is that language is never, ever neutral. It's always doing something. It's either building a wall or it's building a bridge. It's either shrinking your world or expanding it. So that leaves all of us with a final question to think about. What story will your words write now?